Football Australia are going to bid for the 2031 Men's Asian Cup. That's the news that is breaking right now on Tuesday afternoon. I think it is. Christian Monskin's joining me for a quick little instant reaction. Christian, it's good news. Australia's bidding for another major tournament.
Yeah, we saw obviously the success of the Women's World Cup a couple of years ago, and then a decade ago, 2015, we saw how much football grew in this country with that Asian Cup victory, not only to host it, but to actually win the tournament. First piece of silverware under Ange Postecoglou, and hopefully we get this 2031 bid wrapped up and we can host another one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really cool that, 10 years on from winning the whole thing in 2015 on home soil, it was such a big moment. FA now announced that we want to do it all again. And it's really encouraging. I think the big thing for me is the collection of major tournaments that we look like Football Australia is starting to collect, right? We know that intense for bid for the 2034 Men's World Cup was stymied a little bit by Saudi Arabia, and just the organisation and all the power that they have behind them kind of ruined Australia's hopes of hosting that tournament. But, one of the good things to come out of that, at least in conversation with James Johnson, is perhaps that they've drummed up some support for the Men's Club World Cup, which is going to be happening in 2029. Of course, the second edition after America this year. But also, if you add all these things together, we've now got the Women's World Cup from 2023, the Women's Asian Cup is already locked in for 26, and then hopefully the Club World Cup and then the Men's Asian Cup as well. That is quite literally 4 of the 5 major senior tournaments that Australia could possibly host. And if I'm looking a little bit to the future in 10 to 15 years' time when it comes time for another bid for the Men's World Cup, that's a pretty impressive portfolio.
I was just about to say, because, obviously, the Women's World Cup, that was a great advert, I thought, for Australia being able to host these major tournaments, because the Women's World Cup, it gets, over like 1 billion views around the world. It's popular. Like, it's top 10, most watched sporting events on the planet, right? So we've got that, in the bank. It's just unfortunate that we had to compete with Saudi, and you mentioned the power, and you can't really do anything about it. So hopefully in the near future, maybe 15, 20 years time, we can be reevaluated, because I definitely think we do deserve it. Perhaps we need to, double down on stadiums and build a couple here and there, because in terms of actual football stadiums, not having to share them with a couple of, with the AFL and NRL, that's another discussion for another day. But I mean, yeah, I just love how, especially for the 2031, how we're not going to co-host with anyone. It's just going to be Australia, right? And that was the same with 2015, where you don't have to, with Singapore, Malaysia, or another country like that. So the fact that we're able to be financially stable enough to host one on our own, again, it just shows how strong we are in a position, right? So I think that's due to, obviously James Johnson, the outstanding work he's done in the past few years that he's been in the role. And we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, the other countries, putting their hands up. I'm sure a couple more will put their foot forward, and hopefully we get it.
So at the moment, we're in an expression of interest phase. So some countries have put their hands up and say, we are going to submit a bid. Of course, you don't just get to say, hi, we're over here. You have to go through this big formal process of an evaluation and everything. But currently there are confirmed expressions of interest from Indonesia, Kuwait, and the UAE, all individual bids. And then also this morning we got winds that a conglomerate of Central Asian nations, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, have also put in a joint expression of interest, which could take the tournament to Central Asia for the first time in its history. So they're the opposition as we currently know it. There could be more people to put their hands up. But when we think of the kind of dominating forces that have taken a lot of major tournaments in recent years, Christian, those names like Saudi Arabia and Qatar are the two obvious ones. They're not on this list.
Yeah, and rightly so, because it feels like they've hosted every major tournament the past, 5 years or so. It's absolutely crazy. So, I mean, it's good that it's being shared around a bit. What I would say is, although this would probably hinder Australia from what I'm about to say, but we hosted in 2015, 2031, we got a good chance of hosting it again. Should there be a limit of, a time gap of when you're allowed to host these major events, especially in Asia, to just share it around a bit with the likes of Kyrgyzstan, you mentioned, Malaysia, Indonesia, just get just help football grow in some of those other regions, right? Like I'm not complaining if Australia gets it, of course, like I'm all for it, right? We saw the impact it had in 2015, but I don't know, perhaps it's a discussion that the AFC can have, but at the end of the day, it's all down to money, right? Like if Saudi Arabia put their hand up in, 6-8 years time, I'm sure they're going to be, massive favourites to take it again in Qatar as well. So that's just how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? So Qatar had, 2023 actually played in 2024. Saudi Arabia have 2027. I actually don't know if there's rules about specific countries hosting it at different times. We know that FIFA have their whole confederation rule, which has been really manipulated to serve their ends, right? But it's a good point you have. And one of the arguments about Australia potentially still sneaking into one of the next World Cup slots has been, well, sure, you say Asia's already had it, but it's been West Asia, which is a very still different part of the world to East Asia and especially Australia. So, moving around to different regions of the world is, of course, important. But you talk about impact, thinking back to 2015 and the impact that had on the domestic scene as well. It would be really exciting to see what the benefit for something like the A-League could be. And we don't know what the NST or the pyramid's going to look like at that point in time in 2031, but the impact that could have again on Australian football as a whole.
No, it was awesome. In 2015, you look back on it and, even if you weren't the most avid football fan, you were just intrigued, weren't you? It was the same as the Women's World Cup. You didn't have to know anything about football. It was just, it was on the papers. It was, on the news. You could consume it. You learned about different players in different countries. You remember Omar Abdulrahman from UAE. It's like, oh, who is he? And he's just absolute, came out of nowhere, absolute talented footballer. You just learn little things like that, right? And that's what happens when such a major tournament like this, comes on your shores, right? I think one thing if the FA can improve on compared to 2015 is maybe try and market and promote the tournament better. Because I've seen this argument for the Women's World Cup as well, to be fair. There was an article, I believe, it was either in The Age or the Herald Sun, where it said, if you walk the streets, that you couldn't really see, any advertising or promotion. So, get some more posters, billboards, whatever, social media, just try and, promote it as much as possible, because obviously people care more about the World Cup than they do the Asian Cup. That's just the fact, right? So that's even more reason to try and invest in that promotional side of things. I don't know if you agree or not, Lockie, but I think that's probably one aspect where they may be able to improve.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think more is always better in that regard, right? More conversation, more advertisement, obviously means more money and everything like that. But yeah, more is always better. Spread the word about football, spread the word about Asian football is something we really want to do as well. So yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think that'll do us, Christian, unless you have anything else burning to say. But yeah, exciting times for Australia, hopefully, joining this big portfolio of major tournaments. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah, it'll be a nervous wait. Do you know when the actual official date is to reveal? Do you know when it has been roughly in the past? I'm trying to think back when it has.
We'd probably be within 12 to 18 months, I'd suggest, because I feel like Saudi Arabia's been known for a fair while now.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely still a lot of time even to build one or two stadiums. I don't think Australia's in a position to need to do that for an Asian Cup. World Cup's a different story, obviously, but it gives us a bit of time to evaluate everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cheers. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on Friday for the regular pod. See you later.